Okay, so our fourth chapter of the foundations of, FDV book talks about our color scales, and these are basically a more nuanced discussion of what we were just talking about with color. So color can be used for three primary purposes. One is to distinguish between groups. Second is to represent different data values, and then it can be used to highlight a specific data element. So if you see on the bottom right-hand corner there is a link to Color Brewer. I'm going to actually switch our view here so that we can play around with the website and look at our information here from the book. Okay, so color scales that are used to distinguish between groups. These are for our non-ordered qualitative or categorical data. These are distinguishing our different factors using colors. So Color Brewer is such a rad site and system. Things like R and I think Python and the other major things that are very similar in nature all have access into this. So this is basically just so that you can see how they function, basically, and help you choose your colors. So let's go through these one by one. So distinguishing between different groups is a qualitative scale, and you can see that these color schemes, they're very neutral in tone. Like if you do, like I was talking about earlier, you squint your eyes at them, you can't really tell them apart that well. You can see here, it actually tells you that this isn't really colorblind friendly. It's not as specific as the other site, but they've already thought about these at least. It's not good for photocopies for the same reasons, because the tonality or hue or whatever is like about the same. But you know, laptops like it, and printing is good, just photocopies aren't good. So it tells you that kind of information, and you can see that they've got a few different palettes here, and the different names are right here. So set 1, set 2, set 3, the pastels, the paired, the accents, and dark 2. You can change the number of data classes here. So I'm actually going to demo this to you, going back to what we were doing earlier. So we have our continents. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we don't have any nations on our 7th. What am I doing? Okay, so we go to 6, we can see 6 different colors. They're all pretty bright in this dark scheme. I tend to like the dark scheme, and the set 1 is more like primary colors and stuff. Let's do set 1. That one's often seen. So here, I can actually just yank the hex codes. And if you're not familiar with hex codes, they're basically just combinations of numbers and letters that tell you what color something should be. I first learned about them back when I learned HTML a billion years ago. Some of you might not have been alive back then because I'm old. Yeah, we can just transfer these over. It'll take me just a second to do this. So much of data stuff is just copy and paste. Just the way life goes. America. Almost there, almost there. Almost there. Okay. All right, cool. So now we have this chart done in our using Color Brewer set 1. So here's a good question. So here it says it's probably not colorblind friendly. You can even limit it to show which ones are colorblind friendly, and none of them popped up because they're not really meant to be. Let's see what happens when we look at this other website's things. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize I was doing that before. So these we're only checking for their default ones and not for funky ones. So, keep that in mind if you're using this one or similar things, that checking their cool tools is always a good thing. So, yeah, it's not registering at all. So what if you wanted to check this? Actually, what I would do would be to, this is gonna be really like, so y'all are gonna look at me like I'm completely bonkers. I do this kind of stuff all the time. So do that, and you can open up something that actually is meant for something like this if you want. But because everybody has this, so I just copy pasted that in here. They've got color tools here, and what we just do is look at any of these grayscale type versions, and this does the basically you can see the grayscale, so you can see that like there's a little bit of variation, but like they're almost all the same. And so if you had this particular type of colorblind going, like this is a useless map. It's completely useless, right? So even though the colors are aesthetically nice, they're not the best for accessibility. So that's my hack for that. However, the sequentials and the diverging are great. So what do they use? So this is to represent data values that are ordered. And usually when we're doing map stuff, it is either super simple stuff like Democrats versus Republicans, or there are things that are ordered like SES, or the number of people that went to a polling station, and like group by county or whatever it is. So here, the different colors imply the order. So usually it's more to less or something like that, or like temperatures or whatever. These are the color hues or whatever, are equidistant apart. So it gets the same amount darker as you go along. So that gives us some sense of scale and difference here. It can be multi or single hued. So this is an example of a single hued one. These are multi-hued where they have two different colors on the ends. I've mentioned before, companies tend to not like it when you use things like red and green on the opposite scales, because they feel like they're being scolded for stuff. So be careful what you do. You can see that none of these use that. They all use things that are like, they're all aesthetically pleasing, which is great. Single hue ones like this where it is just purple. Colorblind safe because it's all one color. It looks the same grayscale as it does purple. It's just prettier when it's purple. And the diverging is the other version of this, where you have one color in the strip in the middle, or in this case, because we have an even number here, they're just split in half. So these can be used when basically, like if you have positive and negative numbers for this is when you want to use these. And so here's where you can get that red and green thing going. Again, companies will freak out sometimes when you use these. So it's nice to use things like this that aren't associated with anything meaningful. And these tend to look a lot nicer when you have very large scales. Okay, not necessarily in this context. Those are a little jarring. But yeah, in my experience, in most of the charts that I've ever done, you can see like it just gives you more differentiation between the scales there. What this doesn't give us, but the book does, is the accent color thing, and that is basically a feature that you see in interactive maps. So Tableau is a good example of a platform, Power BI also, that uses this type of thing where it basically dims everything except for the one thing that you want. And oftentimes those will use like a muted version of this where you're using a complementary color as the highlight, and just a very dim version of the other color in the background. So Tableau has its own preset stuff that it tends to use, but you can, mess around with the defaults, and it'll look different in different programs. And of course, we can use these in things that aren't interactive. For example, if you wanted to get fancy with your PowerPoints, if this was split up into 3 different slides, because I wanted to use motion without having real motion in it, I could, I could dim these words by making them softer and then brighten up the ones that I wanted to highlight, such as that. And so you know that this is the section that I'm talking about. So that's how you use accenting. And then you just copy the same data or for a slide. So you can kind of fake motion by using accenting like this as well. Okay, that's enough on color. I do encourage you to play around with Color Brewer and similar sites to kind of get a feel for what kind of color schemes that you like and what different color schemes would work for your particular project for each graph and scale. I will say that you should, for your projects or any cohesive project, use a similar scheme throughout. For example, anything that I would ever do for Seattle Genetics, their company colors were green with an accent color of purple. So I would use those colors very, very liberally when choosing things like this. So you probably have something like that as well for whatever data that you're choosing. So look for colors from like company logos and stuff like that to theme it for your particular company.